Now, after almost 6 months since the release of both phones, many of us have been concerned as to whether or not we should get the Pixel 7 Pro or the iPhone 14 Pro Max. And in this video, I wanted to break down what each phone was good at based on various stages of use so that you guys can see which one is actually right for you. Now, the Pixel 7 Pro and iPhone 14 Pro Max are two phones that have a lot in common while also still having many differences that make each of them stand out. They both have amazing hardware complemented with a signature look. Both have top tier displays that are smooth and filled with vibrance. Both have really good batteries that can last you all day even with heavy use, and both give you an amazing experience when it comes to overall performance. And even looking at them from an individual standpoint, there are some things that each phone was better at. The iPhone 14 Pro Max has a better and smoother ecosystem, more software updates which results in longevity, and arguably the best camera in the game, and the Pixel 7 Pro had many valuable advantages as well. It has a really smooth OS experience, it has amazing camera features, and it comes at a much cheaper price when compared to the 14 Pro Max. So even though both of these phones have many things that were good, they both had their downsides when it came to many different things, and today we will be taking a look into what each has to offer so it can help you make a decision on which one is actually worth it. So I will be comparing the Pixel 7 Pro and iPhone 14 Pro Max based on 5 different categories, starting with display, battery, software, speakers, and last but not least, cameras. Now, looking at display, the Pixel 7 Pro has a 6.7-inch LTPO AMOLED display, and the iPhone 14 Pro Max has a 6.7-inch Super Retina XDR display, and I must say that both are very impressive. The combination between brightness, resolution, color, and sharpness makes each of them stand out as top-tier displays. Whenever I was scrolling through the 7 Pro and 14 Pro Max, it looked very nice, everything looked good, the responsiveness was very precise, and I had no complaints about the overall feel of both phones. But I will say that in terms of sharpness and speed, the 7 Pro is slightly faster, so I'll give it the edge. Now, the 7 Pro and 14 Pro Max have a 120Hz refresh rate. Scrolling through the OS and many different apps felt as smooth as ever, and when comparing each phone's refresh rate, I will say that they're both very identical, and if you want a really smooth, easygoing feeling, the 14 Pro Max and the 7 Pro hold up very well. Now, both phones can also drop down to a lower refresh rate whenever they need to preserve battery life, so if you're someone who wants extra battery life and doesn't really care about 120 at all, both phones support this function. Now, the 14 Pro Max and 7 Pro's bezels are extremely small. Right here, you can see that they're wrapped nicely around the screen and are very clean. The 7 Pro's bezels are definitely more slim, especially since it has a slightly curved screen, so you'll get much more screen real estate on the 7 Pro. Now, when it comes to brightness, the 14 Pro Max is at 2000 nits worth of peak brightness, which is much stronger than the Pixel 7 Pro. Another thing that I peeped was that the 14 Pro Max's whites were much more rich and the colors were more vibrant. Now, unlike the 14 Pro Max, something that I didn't like about the 7 Pro's display was facial recognition. When comparing both to each other, I would easily say that the 14 Pro Max wins. It's faster, works better at night, and it's much better no matter the position of your face. But something that I like more about the 7 Pro is that it has an on-screen fingerprint sensor and it works pretty well. And this is my preferred method when unlocking my phone, and unfortunately the 14 Pro Max doesn't have it. Now, the resolution and viewing experience of the 7 Pro and 14 Pro Max's display is an amazing benefit when it comes to consuming media and playing games. Gaming was something that I did a ton of when using both phones, and I will say that when it comes to looks, the 14 Pro Max has slightly better graphics. The 14 Pro Max also handle games with a little less lag, but to be honest, both phones are damn near even when it comes to gaming, so you can't go wrong with either. And I was also able to see everything very clearly when watching videos. I preferred the 7 Pro since I had a slightly curved screen and a little boxier frame, but that's just my personal preference, and I wanted to give you guys an idea of what both phones look like when watching something and playing a game.
Because he's not been around the team that much. Kobe around the point. My goodness, what a display. 10 of 13.
Now, the Pixel 7 Pro has a 5000 mAh battery compared to the 14 Pro Max's 4300 mAh battery, and even though there might be a nicely sized difference on the spec sheet, both phones were able to give me all day battery life, so based on my day-to-day use, I would say that they're pretty much equal. And mind you, I'm the type of person who is usually on my phone all day doing things like writing scripts, planning B-roll, shooting videos, scrolling through social media, watching YouTube videos, and many other things that result in high usage, and I'm usually getting over 7 hours of screen time a day on my 7 Pro and my 14 Pro Max, and I only charge both phones when I go to sleep. I don't cut any corners, I always have 5G on, no auto brightness, I maxed out the resolution, and I never use power saving mode, so I was pretty impressed. And even when I was gaming, the battery hurt the 14 Pro Max a little more, and something that I did admire about the 7 Pro was that gaming hit it a little less, and I was still able to get all day worth of battery life. And if I could give you guys a quick estimate, I would say that my battery on the 7 Pro and 14 Pro Max will be around 20% by the end of the day. And again, if you want battery that will last you all day, you can't go wrong with either. Now, the last thing that I want to touch on when it came to battery was the charging. I used a 30-watt fast charger on both the 14 Pro Max and 7 Pro, and both of them were able to charge from 0 to 100% in a little over an hour, but they both didn't have me waiting too long. So if you do find yourself in a situation where you forgot to charge your phone, by the time you get done showering or running an errand, both phones will be over 70%, which is pretty good for me. Now, looking at software, the Pixel 7 Pro supports Android 13, the 14 Pro Max is on iOS 16, and so far in terms of smoothness and bugs, the 7 Pro is winning in this category. And when going deeper into software, it's genuinely personal preference. The iPhone has better social media integration, FaceTime, iMessage, and a very nice simplistic style. The Pixel 7 Pro feels pretty similar to the 14 Pro Max with that simplicity, and I personally love what each has to offer and the different experiences that they give. The always on display on the 7 Pro was much more simplistic and easy on the eyes. I like using social media on my iPhone more. I liked answering emails and YouTube comments on my 7 Pro, and I really love the different built-in apps that each software had to offer. And in terms of software sleekness, the 7 Pro was the winner, and I liked it because it was not only smooth, but it was also sharp. And Apple's iOS 16 did come with some bugs that are still getting ironed out, and I also loved how it felt like every bit of the 7 Pro's screen was used. There was no dead space, and they didn't just blow up everything to make it look bigger like on the 14 Pro Max. It truly feels like the software is meant for a screen this big. And I also decided to test out some games on the 7 Pro and 14 Pro Max. I play Asphalt 9, which is a game that can really test out the chip, and as you can see, both held up really well, and I didn't get any lags while playing. And now the final thing that I wanted to note was that the 7 Pro will be getting 4 years worth of software upgrades, while the 14 Pro Max will be getting 5 to 6 years. So when it comes to longevity, the 14 Pro Max will last longer. Now, both the Pixel 7 Pro and 14 Pro Max has some really good speakers that were very loud whenever I used them. I will usually use them in the house whenever watching videos on social media or YouTube, and I didn't have to turn them all the way up because of how loud they were on the lower tiers of volume. The 14 Pro Max's speakers were better overall, they had more bass, the sound quality was better, and they're a little louder, so when it comes to comparing both speakers, the 14 Pro Max is the winner. I also tested out the 7 Pro and 14 Pro Max as my alarms, and I had no problem waking up from them. They both did a job, and when it comes to phone calls and notifications, both phones are pretty great. And right here, I'm going to give you guys an idea of how each of the speakers sound. Now, the Pixel 7 Pro has a 50 megapixel main camera along with a 48 megapixel telephoto and 12 megapixel ultra wide, and the 14 Pro Max has a 48 megapixel main camera along with a 12 megapixel telephoto and ultra wide. And for this category, I want to let you guys judge since camera quality varies from person to person. Now, starting with zoom modes, both phones had a couple of different zoom modes. The 7 Pro had a little bit more, but I want to show how each of them did so that you can see the quality, and I found all of the zoom modes to be great when compared to other smartphones. The shutter speed on the 14 Pro Max was a little bit faster, but it really wasn't that much of a difference. I decided to test it out by shooting a moving car, and as you can see, the 14 Pro Max was able to shoot more shots, but either way, both phones were able to get very clean shots, and I was pretty satisfied. Now, next up, I want to show you guys how the camera performed in different environments, and the first environment that I will be starting with is daytime. Now, looking at outside photos, the selfies on my 7 Pro were good, and so were the 14 Pro Maxes. I prefer taking selfies on my 7 Pro since it captures my skin tone much better, but the 14 Pro Max wasn't really far off. I also took some random photos of street objects, the sky, different aspects of nature, and I can honestly say that both phones held up very well in these environments, and I'm really impressed since the sharpness was also really good. Now, taking a look at inside photos, both phones were able to capture everything very nice, and I found the pictures to be slightly less aggressive than the outside photos in terms of sharpness. Now, when it comes to shooting video, both phones were really great, but I will say that based on my use with each, the 14 Pro Max is just better. You have many different modes and frame rates to choose from 720p all the way up until 4K, and as far as frame rate, you have 24, 30, and 60, but I prefer to shoot my videos in 4K at 30 frames per second, and again, I will say that the 14 Pro Max did better. The video stabilization was really good. I shoot my videos with my phone, so whenever I'm shooting my subject, I can use everything handheld, and the movements will be very smooth, which was very impressive. And for fun, I decided to try out the stabilization to the max on each phone, and if I'm being honest, both were amazing, but I still prefer my iPhone since the quality was better. So all in all, I would definitely say that the 7 Pro and 14 Pro Max have good video cameras that'll give you some consistently good shots. So if you're someone who wants to shoot content or you just want a solid camera, they've definitely got you covered. And also, here's some extra videos that I was able to get. So here's the final question. Which phone is actually better? The Pixel 7 Pro or the iPhone 14 Pro Max? Well, in my honest opinion, from an unbiased standpoint, I will say that the Pixel 7 Pro is an overall better phone. And I say this because based on my day-to-day use, the 7 Pro gave me a smoother experience while also providing a fresh feeling. It has a great ecosystem, it has a smoother OS, and in my opinion, it's just the one that I preferred. So if you are someone who does prefer the 7 Pro, it's definitely a phone that you'll be satisfied with. The 14 Pro Max is a great phone as well, but this year, the Pixel 7 Pro is better. But there it is, you guys, my comparison between the Pixel 7 Pro and the iPhone 14 Pro Max. Now comment down below, which phone do you think is the best choice for you? And again, I want to thank you guys for watching today's video, and I'm going to see you guys in the next one. Peace.